Woke up quick at about noon.
Hope you had a wonderful weekend. Welcome into the June 24th edition of the podcast with Damian Barling. I am Damian Barling, and I thank you so much for downloading, streaming, listening, and being a part of this little movement that we're building here across all of these major podcast platforms. For those of you who, I got a really great response to Friday's show. I think so many of you are able to relate to losing your job, and so many of you are able to relate to the emotions that come with losing your job. So I really appreciate everybody who reached out. Some of the emails and texts that I got were really, really extraordinary. But you guys went way above and beyond on the podcast reviews. I can't stress how important the reviews and the ratings are, particularly for Apple Podcasts. And you guys came through in a major way. Not only did you boost the ratings, but, and I know this seems like a small number given the size of the audience, but I think we got like eight to nine brand new reviews. So for those of you who took the time to write that review, man, I greatly, greatly appreciate it. If you haven't yet, just take 60 to 90 seconds to do that. It only takes a split second to leave a rating. You can leave a rating for the podcast quicker than you can leave a rating for Uber or Lyft. So when you're done listening to today's show, just go back to the podcast app, hit the 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate that. We are going to start today's podcast. I think for the first time here, we're headed into the fourth week, and this is the first time we get to do this. But we're starting with your Sacramento Kings. For those listening in the Northern California area, as the most polarizing player on the Sacramento Kings roster, well, he just became that much more polarizing, as according to Jason Anderson of the Sacramento Bee. Jason, by the way, is going to join us here in just a few minutes. He spoke with Willie Cauley-Stein's agent, who said, yeah, you know, I'm hopeful that the Kings will not give Willie his qualifying offer. I think we need a fresh start. Maybe the Kings do too. Okay. I think the majority of Kings fans had a collective laugh at this. Willie Cauley-Stein, for some reason, there's something about talking about money that really turns Sacramento Kings fans off. Rudy Gay did it a year ago. Rudy Gay said he was going to opt out. He didn't specifically speak about money, but those who understand the nature of the collective bargaining agreement know when you're a free agent, you have the ability to opt out. That's the smartest thing to do because you could sign a long-term contract extension after that. The money is greater for you. Kings fans did not like that at all. They did not like hearing that Rudy Gay was going to opt out of his deal. Willie Cauley-Stein at the very, very beginning of the year talked about he wanted that money. He wanted to get that big bread. He wanted to know how to get paid. And immediately Sacramento Kings fans turned on that because what happened is you start looking at a player's production, right? You heard Willie Cauley-Stein, and I want my piece of the pie. How do I get that $100 million? So then you start analyzing everything that he does. You start analyzing the number of points that he has. Start analyzing the number of rebounds and things like that. And that's not unusual. You've got to figure out the worth of a player, right? But this was happening with Willie on a game-to-game basis. So it wasn't looking at his season in totality. It was looking at each moment of each game. And, he's lazy. He's like the days ago. He has no energy. He don't even want a ball, man. He want to paint. He want to be an artist. He want to be a fashion person. He doesn't have the heart. He doesn't have the heart to play ball here in Sacramento. And it was like, okay, let's all pump our brakes with this a little bit and look at Willie Cauley-Stein over the years. And I think the biggest issue with Willie Cauley-Stein for the Sacramento Kings, for at least for me, this is completely 100% my perspective, is what do you want from Willie Cauley-Stein? Like whether you're Vlade or Dave Yeager or you're Luke Walton moving forward, or I'll just throw this out there to the Sacramento Kings fans, like what do you want from Willie Cauley-Stein? Because you're going to say consistent effort, you're going to say high energy, all of these different things. And I think people only notice high energy when it's like psycho high energy, right? Like Quincy Acey. Quincy Acey was just a bundle of dynamite. There are a couple of players on the roster. Harry Giles has an edge to him that Kings fans really like. Amon Shumpert, same thing during the brief time that he was here as the Sacramento Kings. Like people respond to that. And then if they don't see it, well, you start, his body language is bad. He's lackadaisical. He's not moving fast. And I never really thought that about Willie Cauley-Stein. I did question his consistency, but I never questioned his heart. I never questioned his desire to play or anything along those lines. I just questioned why is he unable to consistently put up. You go back to the beginning of last season, the first 2 games of the season, I think he had 24 and 23. Like, he had double-doubles the first 2 games of the season. See, I look back at Willie's season. He had 27 games with double-digit rebounds. Out of the 81 he played, remember, he played 81 games. He started all 81, and he only missed one towards the very, very end of the season, long after the Kings were out of it. But he had 27 games with double-digit rebounds through the 81 that he played. Okay, you could argue for a guy his size, for a guy at that position, it's not good enough. Okay, that's fine. He averaged, was it like 8.7 rebounds this year? That's a career high for him. 8.4, excuse me. He averaged 8.4 rebounds. Again, career high for him. He had, first half, I just mentioned 20-plus point games first 2 games of the season. He had 6 20-point games within the first 18 games of the season. He had 8 through the first half of the season. I only mention that to mention this. Second half of the season, he had 0 20-point games. Second half of the season, he had 17 single-digit point performances. So that feeds in to that feeds into Kings fans who are frustrated with Willie Cauley-Stein's lack of consistency. And I understand that. Like, I get that. But the question I have always asked, and this is the question I'm going to ask you now, it's the question I've been asking really for the better part of 2 or 3 years. What do you want from Willie Cauley-Stein? Like, what do you want him to be? Did you want him to be DeMarcus Cousins, and did you want him to be a 20 and 12 guy, 20 plus, 12 plus? Like, did you want him to be that on average every night? Did you want him to average the 20 and 12 plus on a season? Did you want him to be a 30-minute a 30-minute per game guy? Is that what you wanted him to be? And this isn't just a question to Kings fans. This is a question to, like, the Sacramento Kings. Like, what did you want from Willie through his 4 years? Remember, this is Vlade's first pick as the general manager. Through Willie's first years, first season, rookie season, he played 66 games. He started 39 of them. Played 75 games, started 21 of them. Played 73 games, started 58 of them. Last season, I mentioned he played 81 games. He started 81 games. This is an interesting situation for the Kings because they really have no reason to not extend a qualifying offer. Now, the quote from his agent that went to Jason Anderson at the beginning of this weekend, we haven't felt that he's been able to get what has been necessary for him to be able to lead the franchise the way he wants to. We are very, very thankful for the opportunity that was presented to him, but we just think it's not working. It's not going to work. It's just time for a fresh start. We need a fresh start. Maybe the Kings do too. Okay? So Willie wants to lead a franchise. This was the one question I had about Willie Cauley-Stein, and I actually asked it to someone who was close to him. The question I had always had about Willie is, does he love basketball? Because there are plenty of people in professional sports who play professional sports because they're good at it, not because they love it. Not every professional athlete loves the sport that they play. Not every basketball player is just eats, breathes, sleeps the game. Like, not every basketball player is Kobe Bryant, where everything Kobe Bryant does or did centered around the game of basketball. Michael Jordan, everything he did centered around the game of basketball. Well, those guys stand out for a reason. Those guys' work ethics are legendary for a reason because there aren't very many of them. And I would guess there are a lot of people in the league who play basketball because they're good at it and because they can make a great living at it, and they can't wait to be done with it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, there is absolutely nothing wrong. I mean, how many people work jobs that they don't like? Imagine working a job in which you don't like it, but you get paid millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to do it. The commitment to it is great, though. The commitment to being a professional basketball player, the commitment to being a professional athlete is great. It's a lot more than the 48 minutes on the floor. It's everything that it encompasses, getting ready for games. If you really want to take care of your body and you want to have the most, to be as productive as you can, like, there is work that goes into it. Now, I'm certainly not questioning whether Willie Cauley-Stein works or not. I know Willie Cauley-Stein works. I've seen Willie Cauley-Stein work when the cameras aren't around. But I always questioned whether he loved it. And what was told to me is that Willie Cauley-Stein absolutely loves the game of basketball. If he could play basketball in an empty arena without all of the media and the hoopla and all of that, he would do it. If he could play professional basketball in an empty arena, he would do it. Now, keep in mind, part of an agent's job, remember, an agent works for a player. And the angle here for Willie Cauley-Stein's agent is perhaps you might be able to get a better deal if Sacramento publicly says, well, okay, you're right. We need a fresh start. We're not going to extend him a qualifying offer. But there really is no reason for the Sacramento Kings to say we're not going to extend him a qualifying offer. Unless they've just decided, you know what, screw it. We don't want anything to do with him. He doesn't want anything to do with us. If we state this publicly, it might actually help him. It might be able to help him get a better deal. Because with restricted free agency, a lot of teams will want to make a player a qualifying offer. Or they'll want to make them like if Willie gets the qualifying offer from the Sacramento Kings, 6.2, and say the Los Angeles Clippers want to bring Willie Cauley-Stein in for what they feel is a very fair $8.5 million. They can't do anything with that cap space that would belong to Willie Cauley-Stein if Willie Cauley-Stein signed that deal until the Sacramento Kings say, okay, we're not matching that deal. You can have him. So it handcuffs the team who makes the offer for 3 days. So they can't move forward in free agency. They can't extend larger offers to other players. They can't do anything that would jeopardize that cap space that is now reserved for that restricted free agent. And then a lot of times in those situations, you wait 3 days, and then the team's like, oh, 8.5? Yeah, we'll match that. He's staying with us. And now the team that just offered the the money to the restricted free agent, now they just lost 3 days of free agency because you're at the mercy of the team who has the ability to match the deal. 72 hours is too long. I think there are a number of things that need to change within the NBA and free agency and the draft and all of that stuff. This might be one of them. Like 72 hours is a long time given how quickly things are going to start moving come 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on June 30th. Like things are going to be moving at such a rapid rate. Imagine waiting. Okay, we offered it to Willie Cauley-Stein. Now we've got to wait 3 days. We literally can't do anything. We are just stuck here. We can operate within this dollar figure. We can operate within, let's say they have $20 million available. We can offer within this range of the $12 million we have left, but we can't do anything with the other $8 million because we've offered it to Willie Cauley-Stein. And if Sacramento says they want to keep him, well, we're stuck. So the NBA needs to fix that. And I go back to what I said a couple of days ago. It's really what I've been saying for months. Willie Cauley-Stein fits with De'Aaron, man. And I know Kings fans don't want to hear that, but he does. He is the perfect player for De'Aaron Fox, and he is the perfect center for the way that the Sacramento Kings play. That doesn't mean he needs to start 81 games or 82 games or 50 games. It means he fits into your system really well, and I think that was actually the response from the Sacramento Kings. The Kings had a very short statement in response to everything from Willie Cauley-Stein and his agent. Roger Montgomery, Roc Nation, by the way, just for full detail of the story here. That's his agent. Kings were like, yeah, Willie's been a piece of our franchise, and he plays well within our system. And they just kind of left it at that. And the Kings do have all control. When you have a restricted free agent on your roster, you're pretty much in charge of everything. Now, how aggressive? The Kings can be significantly more aggressive in free agency if they just let Willie go. Because you've already got the Harrison Barnes situation that you got to deal with. And I don't think you want to deal with the Willie Cauley-Stein situation as well. You can extend him the qualifying offer and allow him to see what's out there. Because maybe there isn't, was it 6.8? Maybe there isn't 6.2, sorry. Maybe there isn't $6.2 million out there for Willie Cauley-Stein. I'd be surprised if that was the case. Very, very surprised if there isn't at least $6.2 million out there for Willie Cauley-Stein. There's going to be a number of teams with a lot of money. And there are going to be teams that strike out. That's the other thing that people are forgetting. Everybody's got Kevin Durant going here and Kyrie Irving going here, and everybody's going to go join LeBron and AD in the Lakers, and I got Kawhi going to the Clippers. And we forget that, well, all of these teams can't land all of these players. Like, what's Kevin Durant going to wind up doing? If Kevin Durant winds up in Golden State and Klay Thompson winds up in Golden State, okay, you just wiped out those two. You just broke up the KD-Kyrie Irving pairing. Okay, now Kyrie decides he wants to go play for the Los Angeles Lakers. Okay, fine. Now all of a sudden you have two New York teams that haven't landed anybody that they wanted. So they got to work on their restricted free agents. By the way, Brooklyn, D'Angelo Russell, restricted free agent. You got to deal with that situation right there. And then it's like, well, who do we pursue now? Well, we got a team that likes to run. We got a team that likes to get up and down the floor. Oh, maybe we could go grab Willie Cauley-Stein. Maybe Willie Cauley-Stein will do better here. Maybe Willie will do better now that he's out of Sacramento. Maybe he'll do better with a more stable organization. He's been in the league 4 years. I think he might be the one draft pick. How many coaches has he had? I can't even remember how many years. Is he a Jaeger guy? I feel like Jaeger was here all of those years. Seems crazy to think that there might have been a coach here for 4 straight years. But he couldn't. What he had Carl 1 year, right? So 2 coaches, 4 years. Oh, that's not the worst. We've heard significantly worse. So I guess that's not that bad. But maybe the Kings never knew what they wanted from him. They wanted consistency, but maybe they never gave that consistency back to Willie. Again, 39 games started his first year, 21 games started his second year, 58 his third, and then 81 in his fourth year. Last year, in the 81 games that he played, in the 81 games that he started, was his most productive year, which is such a shame. Like that, all of that was buried because of the 2 separate remarks he made about money. The one about, hey, I want to get paid. I want that big contract. I want that money. And I think the other one was it was almost like a smart-ass remark about Steven Adams being a $100 million rebounder. So you have those 2 situations right there. If you completely wipe those out and you just have Willie Cauley-Stein, fourth-year player coming up on restricted free agency, I think the narrative, at least amongst Kings fans, is very different. Because when Jason Anderson broke this story this weekend, Kings fans, there weren't enough laughing emojis to go around for Kings fans. They just thought this was comical. Like, you can't quit because you're fired. Like, that's oh, you're going to fire me? Okay, well, I quit. Well, no, you can't quit because you're fired. It's like two entities trying to humiliate the other one first. And Roger Montgomery and Roc Nation and Willie Cauley-Stein, they only have so much control over this situation. So their play, his play, Roc Nation's play is to step out and try to get the best deal possible for Willie Cauley-Stein, and that would only occur if the Sacramento Kings throw their hands up and go, yeah, well, we're not extending a qualifying offer. He's good. Let him walk. Which I don't think is the smart thing for the Kings to do. Because even with all of this cap money that the Sacramento Kings have, they still have got to fill out their roster. Like, Kevin Durant's not coming here. Kyrie Irving isn't coming to Sacramento. Kawhi Leonard isn't coming to Sacramento. Those massive, $30 million contract, $30 million, $40 million per year, they're not coming here. So how are you going to use that money? If you told me $8 million on Willie Cauley-Stein, yep, I'd do it. I'd absolutely do it. Because that still leaves you enough money to pursue another big man in free agency. Though, if you believe the various reports that the number one target for the Sacramento Kings is a big man, well then maybe you let Willie walk. because you've already got Marvin, who's your starter, and I know he's, I guess, not a 5. I don't know why we're still assigning positions. You got front court and back court. I think that's just how we should look at it from now. Talked to James Ham, was it last week? He wasn't high on the idea of Harry Giles starting, thinks he needs another year on the bench and another guy to come in and help him develop and another definitive 5th starter. Okay, well, who's it going to be then? We'll talk more about the situation with Willie Cauley-Stein and his agent coming up here in just a couple of minutes when Jason Anderson, who broke this story for the Sacramento Bee, joins us. Another news story that became available shortly after the podcast posted on Friday. Joe Dumars. He will serve as the special advisor to general manager Vlade Divac. Dumars, of course, spent many years, spent 13 years to be exact, as the general manager of the Detroit Pistons. He was responsible for the Pistons' 2004 NBA championship. But, you know, he had his hiccups along the way. He's had various advisory roles ever since then, but he is stepping in. And I think the timing of this is pretty important. Joe Dumars is stepping in on the eve-ish of NBA free agency. You know, it was announced about 8 days before NBA free agency starts that Joe Dumars was making his way into the Sacramento Kings front office. Joe Dumars he's a Hall of Famer, much like Vlade is, and he is a credible guy across the league. Every general manager makes poor decisions. Joe Dumars made some in Detroit, but he also won an NBA championship with a very unique team, by the way. That was a unique group that he had there in Detroit, and he helped build that. So he's got a lot of respect throughout the league. And I think that's important because as much as Kings fans don't really want to acknowledge this, I do believe that Scott Perry was a major part of guys like Vince Carter coming to Sacramento. I think he was a major part of George Hill coming to Sacramento. Now, I know Kings fans aren't high on George Hill, but he's a very quality player. I think those guys signed up. Zach Randolph, I think those guys signed up to come here and be a part of the Sacramento Kings because of Scott Perry. I think Joe Dumars can have that same effect. So a couple of big stories surrounding the Sacramento Kings this past weekend. The addition of Joe Dumars and, of course, the situation with Willie Cauley-Stein, Jason Anderson of the Sacramento Bee. He had this story. He spoke with Willie Cauley-Stein's agent. And Jason, what I'm curious here is, did something happen since the conclusion of the season that led Roger Montgomery and Roc Nation to make this statement to you over the weekend?
I don't think something happened. I asked him if this was new or if this had been. He told me that Roger told me that this is, he's felt this way for some time. They've felt this way for some time. I think Willie has very mixed emotions. In fact, I was on 13 last night, and he told them as recently as a week ago, he wanted to be here and a part of the first playoff team and, those things. But those are just, somebody puts a TV camera in your face and you kind of default, I think, to the PC answer. But, this was, his agent clearly had an objective. He wanted to make this announcement, not just to the NBA, but to the Kings.
Yeah.
He hadn't even made this request with them at that point. So I think our story was how they served notice that they wanted out. But no, it wasn't a new feeling. It was they've felt this way for some time, is what he told me.
Yeah, even without the TV cameras, because I had always heard from people who were close to Willie that he really does like it in Sacramento. Now, of course, that was during the season. And, of course, maybe that is the feeling during the season. And then once you're able to step away, you're able to kind of get away from the team, get away from the grind, and perhaps even get away from the city. Maybe suddenly you start to take things in its more in its totality, and you think back. We just laid out the statement earlier in the year. Well, how do I get that contract? How do I get my $100 million? And then the remark about Steven Adams, I think it was Steven Adams being a $100 million rebounder, and how those two remarks really rubbed the Sacramento Kings fans base the wrong way. I wonder if once he was removed from that, he just started to see it differently.
Yeah, perhaps. My kind of where I think about this is two things. One, as we all know, there's Willie the person and there's Willie the player, and the interests are not necessarily the same. I think as a person, he loves Sacramento. He likes to be here. As a player, I think they've seen that for his career path, staying here, where he's not going to get the money he wants if he kind of gets stuck in staying, and probably gets transitioned to a backup role either now or at some point. It's better for him to go somewhere where they feel like, hey, we need an option at center. He has a lot to offer, obviously. I mean, he fits the modern NBA game, and so if somebody wants to get him in at a lower price. They've got Ford, who's a glass cleaner, and he fits well. There are going to be opportunities for him to stay a starter, I think, in the NBA, and I think that's what his agent's trying to do is to make sure that he doesn't get stuck in a place where they're trying to upgrade at the 5.
I mean, I think he fits well with the team that wants to run, and obviously the Sacramento Kings want to run. And my argument has always been he fits really well with the way that De'Aaron Fox plays and the way that the team plays. But maybe in its totality, that's just not enough anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that anybody's going to run the 4 better, but you could find a dozen guys or more who are going to rebound and block shots better. But you do, I think, no matter who else you go with, you give up something in terms of the rim running ability. But, I don't know. That's a weird thing to me, too, because we haven't been able to talk to Luke yet. I know what Dave thought about Willie and Marvin and having a stretch big out there and those things. But we don't know what Luke thinks about all that stuff. And so that's kind of a wild card in the discussion, is not knowing whether Luke sees kind of a different way to use Willie. Dave switched him constantly. They were always in pick and rolls, so he's always switching out on, the perimeter. Well, you're not going to block a lot of shots and rebound that way. I don't know if Luke sees kind of a different way of using him where maybe they do tap that potential fully or not. But from Willie's perspective, if they're starting to price the market and they realize we're going to get $8 to $10 million, like that's all anybody's going to give us, the Kings are going to match that and bring him back, and they could still go get somebody better, move Willie into a backup role, and then play Marvin and Harry at the 4.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I've thought, is that his agent may be trying to get out in front of the possibility that he's not going to get an offer beyond what the Kings are willing to match, to just have control over him, whether it's as an asset or as a starter, or as a backup, or whatever.
That's one of the things we were laying out right before you joined us, is there really is no benefit for the Sacramento Kings to say, oh, he's not, we're not going to extend it. Yeah, there's no benefit to the Kings saying anything about what they're going to do with Willie Cauley-Stein, and I don't think there's a benefit for them to not extend a qualifying offer. That gives you the opportunity to sign him, and it also gives you an opportunity to let the market play itself out. And I think you're 100% accurate with what you just laid out. This was an effort by Roger Montgomery and Roc Nation to try to get the best deal possible for Willie, which you're not always able to do as a restricted free agent, because when teams make, reasonable, or what they feel are reasonable offers, those offers are almost always matched. And the Kings have enough cap flexibility to be able to sign Willie Cauley-Stein to the dollar figure that you laid out, which is about $8 to $10 million, and then go out there and sign a number of other players, including locking up Harrison Barnes long term. But it's hard to get a feel for what their plan is. We know what Willie Cauley-Stein thinks, or we know what Willie Cauley-Stein's team thinks of the Sacramento Kings. But what does the Sacramento Kings, what do they think of Willie Cauley-Stein, and how this qualifying offer plays out over the course of the next 6 days is going to be really interesting to me.
It is going to be interesting, and I think they want to have Willie on the hook as a plan B. If they strike out with any of these bigger name guys, he may end up being your best option. There really are, even though the market is flush with players and cap space, and even some really good centers, there are only a few who would be a nice fit here. There's no guarantee you get one of those guys. So I think the Kings have kind of run into the reality, like, wait, we might not want to run him out of town so fast. And it's a weird place. I think we all expected to be in this place where Willie's probably leaving, but this dynamic, the way it sort of just happened with Roger dropping these bombs on Saturday is sort of I don't know. It's odd to me. This is not exactly how I expected it. Yeah, right. I didn't anticipate that part of it.
But that's what agents do. I mean, agents work for the players, and Roger and Roc Nation, they got to go out and they try to get it. They've got to try to get the best deal for Willie Cauley-Stein in a market where, you know, I don't know what his value is. Like, I should say, I don't know what his market value is. I have no clue. Like, if you told me it was $8 million, I would believe you. If you told me it was 14.5, I'd still believe you.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I can't pin it down either. And I don't know that we know really until teams start throwing money around next week. I mean, each year seems to be just depending on who's got cap space and how much and who, you know, I mean, a couple of years ago, everybody got overpaid. I mean, if he's in that group, like what was it 2 years ago where they were throwing like $20 million contracts around to garbage players. I mean, he gets paid.
It's going to be so hard to look back at these. There's going to be like a 4-year stretch of free agency that when you look back at in the history books, none of it's going to make sense because the cap flexibility was changing so much from year to year that there were those 2 summers where money was just being burnt. And then all of a sudden pockets got tight because big contracts were coming up. And then there's the discrepancy between what Timofey Mozgov made and what some other high quality players made is like, there's going to be no way to understand it if you look back in the history books. No way at all.
No, you're right. And I mean, it just that 1 year, the cap balloons, right? So everybody, that explains the Mozgov thing. And that's a prime example of that exact situation. So
what do you think they do?
Interesting stuff.
What do you think they do? Do you think they extend the offer?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, unless there's an angle that I don't see, you know, I think Willie's side's trying to make it uncomfortable to the point that, look, just don't extend the offer. That's what they're trying to avoid, obviously. But unless there's some reason I don't see where it doesn't make sense for the Kings not to extend the offer, and then at least because you can rescind that offer anytime you want.
Right.
You could trade him. You could just release him. I mean, they can do anything they want, and nothing changes if you extend that offer, as far as I know. So, yeah, extend the offer.
And what other approach do you think they have during free agency? Do you have an idea of who they might be looking at, who they might be targeting, maybe prime positions that they're going to be looking at 6 days from now?
I mean, we've heard for months center and backup point guard.
Yeah,
I think that's still that's still likely that they're looking at those things. Barnes, they need a lot of help at 3 if Barnes is leaving. I don't think he's leaving. They have a better idea of that. If there's some indication they might not be able to hang on to him. I've been trying to find out how that looks, and I'm just not. I don't have anything strong in terms of clarity on where that's going. But I think all indications have been that Harrison's going to stick around. So in that event, you focus on the 5 and probably the backup point guard spot. Maybe you want some depth. You need some depth at the wing. So those things I would say are most likely. And then if Harrison leaves, they're in a world of trouble. They've taken a huge step back, I think.
Yeah. Well, Jason, we appreciate you joining us on the podcast, my man. Thank you.
Yeah, hit me up whenever you want, buddy.
Okay.
And best of luck.
Jason Anderson, Kings beat writer for the Sacramento Bee. Wanted to thank you guys again. Many of you reached out after Friday's show and had some kind words to say. Also, a number of you suggested starting a Patreon account. I'd always been kind of resistant to that because, I'm offering you something that's completely free, like podcast free. I used to be on terrestrial radio, AM radio. It's free. So setting up a Patreon account, I was always nervous about, but so many of you suggested it that I finally did do it. I set up a Patreon account. I also set up a website as well. So if you ever have trouble finding the podcast or you ever have trouble finding the Patreon account, just go to DamianBarling.com. Everything that you could possibly want from me is there. Probably a lot more than you'll ever need from me is there. But if you want to go to the Patreon account and donate, that's all that's going to be here at this point, because I know normally you get bonus material and we've got all these bonus tiers if you donate $5 or if you donate $10. I don't have any of that stuff yet. I just started the Patreon account. I put it out there. If you want to donate, awesome. If you don't, it's all good, man. It's just out there. It's for you. I think when the NBA season gets here, like particularly when the Kings season gets here, and perhaps when the NFL season gets here as well, we'll come up with some tiers for that Patreon account. And that might be where the live video stream comes into play. When the podcast started, I'd always thought eventually we're just going to go to a live stream on YouTube, and I'll just be recording the podcast live there on YouTube and then post it to the different platforms immediately afterwards. But I wanted to make sure we kind of nailed this format down before trying to get into the video format. So Patreon, that might be where the video feed comes into play. But you can connect with me there on Patreon. You can connect with me at DamienBarling.com and across all social media platforms as well. At Damien Barling on Instagram and Twitter. Again, all of this stuff is because of you. The Patreon account is because of you. The website is because of you. Really, this podcast is because of you and all the support that you have shown me over the last 3-4 weeks or so. 916-888-5898. That is our greatest form of communication. That is our 24/7 text line. 916-888-5898. Believe it or not, the most valuable player of the NBA is going to be announced tonight. We're so concerned about what's going to go on next Sunday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Completely forgot there's an award show that nobody freaking cares about. Giannis Antetokounmpo, in my opinion, should be winning his first MVP award. How stupid would it look? See, this is why they have got to put an end to this. And I know they do it for TV purposes. I know they do it for their relationship with TNT. I understand all that. It's dumb. And somebody within the NBA or TNT or whoever needs to step up and go, okay, we tried it for a couple of years. It was an L. This is dumb. It doesn't work. Let's go back to giving the MVP their trophy, and let's go back to giving the Rookie of the Year. Zion Williamson has been drafted and introduced by the New Orleans Pelicans. We know the date of Zion Williamson's first game in Summer League. But we don't know who the Rookie of the Year is for last year. Now, granted, yes, we do know who the Rookie of the Year is, but he hasn't been presented his trophy yet. Dude, we've got to stop this. But how stupid is it going to look if James Harden wins? Because I understand that James Harden had a good season. I understand that they played fine in the playoffs and all of that. But there's been nothing but nonsense surrounding the Houston Rockets since their season ended. Hell, even before their season. Since their series with the Warriors started, there's been nothing but nonsense surrounding the Houston Rockets. And then it's like, oh, by the way, here we are like a month later and James Harden wins his second straight MVP. James Harden had a good season. He had an impressive scoring streak. He averaged 36-plus points per game, 36.1 to be exact. 8th most in NBA history. He didn't have an MVP season. And it's cute that they invited Paul George. It's like the Heisman Trophy thing where you got to invite at least 3. So we're just going to throw Paul George in this mix. Again, Paul George had a fantastic season. But he's probably third here in this race. And to me, it's Giannis, Harden, and then it's Paul George. I think Paul George's season, more than being impressive, and it was, but I think what it really did is it just caught people off guard. It was like, whoa, okay, maybe we forgot how good Paul George was. Maybe we didn't think he was going to be able to play like this in Oklahoma City with Russell Westbrook. But yeah, Paul George, he's pretty good. He's in the MVP conversation. Okay, I mean, that's fine. I mean, I think Paul George is only in the MVP conversation because Kawhi Leonard missed 20 games. Because my money would still be on Kawhi Leonard being at the top of this MVP discussion if he had played closer to 72, 3, 4, 5 games, something like that. Speaking of Kawhi, Los Angeles and Clippers fans have bought up 2 digital billboards right over I-5, about 10 miles southeast of the Staples Center, encouraging Kawhi Leonard to come play for the Clippers. One of them is a California license plate, the personalized license plate that reads Kawhi with the hashtag Clipper Nation. The other one reads King of SoCal. It actually says King of the North. The North is crossed out. It says SoCal, and then it says hashtag Kawhi to LAC. I have no idea how much these billboards cost. But does any fan of any team anywhere believe that a free agent is sitting and he's meeting with his representatives and he's talking about all the different scenarios, and he just goes, those Clipper fans, they made me a billboard. I think I'm going to go play for the Clippers because that billboard, man, that really set it over the top. Does anybody think that that's how this is going to go? It's cute. And didn't the Kings do that? Did the Kings do that with Chris? But now that I think about it, it wasn't actually Kings. Wasn't it the Maloofs? I know there was a billboard for Chris during that free agency period. Now, I know there was all this talk about, well, mow your lawn, cook your food, do all of those different things. But I feel like there was a billboard, but this one, I don't think it was bought by Kings fans. I feel like it was actually purchased by the Maloofs, but that could be wrong. But like, who looks at, they do, why do you guys do this? Why do fans do this? Not you guys. You guys wouldn't do this. This is dumb. Why do fans do this? Didn't they do that? They did it in New York with Kevin Durant. They used like the worst possible billboard. It was so lame. You guys are, but I guess if you got the money to spend, because this had to have cost, what? This had to have cost at least $10,000 maybe? You just spent $10,000 on a billboard for Kawhi Leonard? At least $10,000? Or maybe they know the guy in charge of the billboard and it was free. You know what wasn't free? I'm sure everybody saw this. The video of Cam Newton. I have so many questions regarding Cam Newton and what was going on here this week for him. He was coming back from Men's Fashion Week in, I think it was France. And I'm a Cam Newton fan. Cam Newton's got mad style. I couldn't pull it off. I couldn't pull off a number of the things, most of the things that Cam Newton wears. But his drip is deep. Like, that dude's got a pool. He can go. But there's this clip of him boarding a plane, and he offers $1,500 to a guy because he wants to sit in his seat so he can have more leg room. And the man declined his offer. And so Cam just had to, put his head down, go back to his seat. If you're offering $1,500 to a guy to change seats with you, like, why didn't you buy a business class ticket? Like, this is an international flight. Like, he could have had a ticket probably with a plane that had a bed on it, like a lay flat, and his own like little room, like a little cocoon that they have now in these executive seats. Why is Cam Newton flying coach? His outfit almost certain. And who gets on a plane dressed the way that Cam Newton was? Cam Newton was dressed like he just got off the runway at Men's Fashion Week. Who takes an international flight dressed like that? Like, how is anyone on a flight that long not wearing like sweats or joggers or a hoodie or something more comfortable? Cam is dressed like he's walking the runway there on the plane, getting on a God knows how long flight back to the United States. And all he wanted was a little more leg room, but the man said no. Do you think he did it just like, was he a Falcons fan or a Saints fan or something? He was just like, no, man, you can't have my seat. You can't have my seat, man, not for $1,500. Or was he trying to drive the price up? Because it's not like he was asking him to go back and, sit by the toilet. Like, he was asking him to basically move across the aisle for $1,500, and the dude said no. Man. I want to know who the guy who said no is. That's what I'd like to catch up on. I'd like to throw a couple other stories your way here. We're not catching up, but we're going back. Remember how we had a lengthy discussion about netting at baseball games? And we applauded. I think it was the Chicago White Sox. They're going to extend their netting beyond the dugouts and to the foul poles down the third baseline and the first baseline. And they're going to do that during the season. They're not going to wait until the postseason to get this done. They're not going to put any more of their fans in danger. You remember how we had that discussion? Remember how we had the discussion that Rob Manfred is sitting on his hands too long and he's endangering fans by not requiring teams to extend their netting down to the foul poles? You remember that discussion? And a lot of you reacted to that conversation because a lot of us have all sat on those first and third base lines and we know how scary it is and we know how dangerous it could be. And so does the young woman at Dodger Stadium who took a ball off of Cody Bellinger's bat to the face. Now, all signs are she's okay. Cody Bellinger went to check on her, got the thumbs up. 15 minutes later, she left. She sat in her seat with like an ice pack. She got hit directly in the face with a baseball. The game was stopped for 6 minutes. As people were attending to her, Cody Bellinger was trying to check on her. A number of people were trying to check on her because this is an all too familiar scene at baseball stadiums now. And no matter how athletic, because I know there's someone there saying, well, you got to put your phone down. Well, you got to pay attention to the game. Well, you got to be razor sharp. You could be razor sharp. You could not have a phone in your hand. You could not have a beer in your hand. You could not have a baby in your hand. You could be watching every second of everything that's happening in front of you and still get drilled in the face because that ball is coming at you so quick that even a person with the best reflexes isn't going to be able to react fast enough. That ball could be coming at you in excess of 100 miles an hour. And you think, oh, I'm just going to throw my hand up and catch it. Like, no, man, it doesn't work like that. This woman took a ball to the face. But, Rob Manfred, we've got to check with the season ticket holders, right? That's what we've got to do. We got to explore all possibilities because, a couple fans have died, by the way. I think one died at Dodger Stadium. But it's okay, Rob. Take your time, buddy. We don't want to act on this too much. We don't want to act too fast. We don't want to act prematurely here, Rob Manfred. We'll just next time it won't be a grown woman who gets a ball to the face. It'll be a kid. And maybe that kid won't be as lucky as that young woman was. But by all means, Major League Baseball, take your time. You know who else should take your time? Santa Anita. Because they had a gathering on Thursday of 500 workers who work at the Santa Anita racetrack. Remember Santa Anita racetrack? 29 horses have died at that racetrack. We talked extensively about it. Well, an estimated 500 workers, they gathered on Thursday, and they said, hey, we love horses. Hey, we love our jobs. We're scared. We're going to lose our jobs. We're scared because you're trying to close this track. You guys don't realize what these horses mean to us. They're everything. Look, this is our world. 2 days later, on Saturday, the 30th horse in the last 6 months died. This is a story, again, at this freaking track. And I've said what I've had to say about it. How this track remains open is beyond me. So I'm calling on my family here. Ken Rudolph, former member of the Lowdown, and has been entrenched in the horse racing community for years. Ken, I need you to explain to me why the Santa Anita racetrack isn't closed.
Wow. There's so many reasons why it hasn't been closed yet. But I think number one reason is money. It's very expensive to run the track. It's very expensive for trainers and owners to house and stable those horses every single day. So the only chance you have to make a return on that investment is obviously to run that horse at the track. They also have the Breeders' Cup coming up, November 1st and 2nd. That is the biggest weekend of racing in the country, the whole year. And so that's a lot of money to be made from that. And so I think the combination of they have a break now, right? They just had a break. Their closing day was on Sunday, so they get a break until July 17th. The next big meet will run at Del Mar. So they feel like they have that time to take a look at the track, take a look at more trainers, and to show the Breeders' Cup board that will be meeting this week on Thursday to show them that they can keep the Breeders' Cup there. But the Breeders' Cup board is meeting to decide if they're going to move that. And that, I think if they move the Breeders' Cup, that will definitely force the people who own Santa Anita to shut it down completely and just completely reevaluate the surface and everything the trainers are doing with their horses. But if they get the Breeders' Cup, they're not going to change much, I don't think.
How is this happening? 30 horses in the span of 6 months? How is this happening?
It's a combination of things, and I am in no way, shape, or form trying to necessarily indict or defend horse racing. The industry is disjointed. It's fragmented, and they don't have leadership. They don't have any governing body that says, hey, this is what we're going to do when this happens. Every state has their own rules, and that's the main problem. That is the main problem, because if they were transparent and they had one governing body, this started happening at Santa Anita, someone would have jumped in and said, hey, we're going to shut you down, or someone would have at least stood up in front of the media to answer questions, because that's, the number one job of media is to hold people accountable and get some answers. At least someone would have given the media an answer. So there's no David Stern, you know what I mean? Or Adam Silver, or even Roger Goodell Even if you don't like him, he stands there and says, "This is what we're doing."
Sure.
And then you get to hate him. You know who to hate. But with horse racing, there's no one doing that, and it's really all on the owners because they make so much money, but they're really, really interested in their own personal endeavor, and they're not really interested in growing the sport or the industry.
I mean, if someone dies on the teacups at Disneyland, the teacups aren't opening the next day. If 30 kids die on the teacups, Disneyland isn't opening again. I guess it feels like they're devaluing these horses. Like a horse gets injured and it doesn't go to rehab, like it dies. And now you've got, they holding this big rally of, all of the workers saying we love horses. This is our life. This is our place. We're scared for our jobs. This is the best place in the world. And then 2 days later, the 30th horse in the last 6 months dies. It's like, I don't even know how and this is why I always turn to you for this stuff. This horse racing industry, and you sort of just said it there. This is bad business, man. This is like bad business for millionaires.
It's a very interesting, like if you think about, I always compare their big names, the big owners, the big farms that are in horse racing. They're legacy farms. They've been around for decades, and ownership has been around for decades. And I kind of compare it to all the owners in the NFL. A lot of those are old money, and some of them inherited the team. But at least they had enough common sense to say, hey, we've got to get together. They had enough sense to say, let's all be together. And even if we follow Jerry Jones, we're going to do it together. Mm-hmm. And we're all going to make money together. And when something happens, we get in trouble together. At least they had enough sense to do that. I'm not sure why the owners in the industry of horse racing are not much more of a collective. I don't know, collaborate more. This is happening and the industry is being attacked. But what they do in horse racing is they turn inward and they just assume that the media doesn't like them. And they assume that any human being like yourself that doesn't know racing but cares about horses, they just say, we don't know what we go through. Yet they're not transparent enough to share with everyone what they go through every single day. And they really do take care of the horses. The people who live in those stables, the people who work at the track, if you read the article or you saw the rally, those are all Hispanic, Latin people, many of them who are coming over here to get their visas and work cards and citizenship. They don't make a lot of money at all. They sleep in those stables with those horses. Those people dedicate their lives to it. So the big problem is the owners.
Wouldn't they be more wouldn't that make them even more outraged as to what's happening? Like not knowing if that horse that you lay with, that horse that you take care of and that you bathe and that you feed and you all do all that stuff with, the next time it steps on the track, it could be injured and gone the next day.
Right. But the owner who owns that horse is paying your salary, not the public, not the LA Times, none of the TV stations in Los Angeles. No one in Sacramento is paying their salary. The owner who owns that horse is paying for all of them. And so who are they going to be loyal to? Well, they want that track to stay open. They want those owners to stay there and stay in business so they can do what they do. Because if they shut that down, where are those people going to go for work? Like, think about that. If you were a politician, right? If you're the governor and he's talking about they need to shut that down. But have you thought about the thousands of people who work back there who will have nowhere to go? So it's a really tricky situation, man. I don't have an answer. I don't think anyone does, but I do believe the first step toward that is the industry has to find a way to come together, and I don't think they're ever going to do that.
All right. Well, this is gross. I want my 40 acres, sport. Man.
Dude, that's a whole nother conversation. That is a whole separate conversation.
I want my 40 acres out of this story is what I'm saying. Like I want my pound of flesh. Like I don't like this, man. And I remember bringing it up the first time on the radio, like 20 something horses in. And then we started bringing it up here on the podcast. It's like this number just keeps getting larger.
Yeah, and the thing that's so weird about it is people just can't seem to come together. Like the media that's really covering this a lot is in Los Angeles, but I'm really disappointed because they're not coming at it from the right perspective. They're supposed to be getting answers, and they're coming out there indicting the track and the industry before they've even asked a question. And so then that puts everybody at the track on the defense, and therefore they don't answer questions, they don't explain anything, and that's the huge problem with horse racing. There's no transparency. But I really, even being a part of the industry for so long, I can't explain the numbers, man. It's really crazy. It's a confluence of events with the severe weather they had in Southern California. It was so much more rain than that track could handle. Mm-hmm. That compromises the foundation underneath everything. And so that was a problem. And then they started looking at some of the trainers, and they weren't doing what they were supposed to do, as far as doing good by the horse.
Sure.
Right? Taking care of the horse's needs first. And then they targeted a Hall of Fame trainer who's probably won, I don't know, he may have won more races in Northern California than any trainer in the history of this game. And he's won quite a few in Southern California. He's a Hall of Fame trainer. And they just banned him from both those tracks.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because he's a trainer that deals with what they call lower level horses. He's not, you've all heard of Bob Baffert, and we've talked to Doug O'Neill. They deal with high caliber horses where the owners pay a lot of money for a good horse.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Hollendorfer doesn't have those. He deals with lower level horses. And so you have to be a bit more careful with them. And maybe they're deciding his style has not been careful enough. Or maybe they're just looking for someone to kind of a sacrificial lamb to throw out there so the media will back off. I don't know what they're doing with that, but they put a Hall of Famer out.
All right. Well, I'm going to keep turning to you for this stuff. You want to weigh in on anything else before we let you go? We miss you. You want to talk about Willie Cauley-Stein or Joe Dumars or?
Oh my goodness, there's so much to talk about. I don't want to take up your whole show. What are you talking about? You got to fill your time.
Cam Newton tried to get $1,500 to get some more leg room, and the guy said no. We talk about that.
I know, that was like, come on, man! Like, just be cool.
Like, why
wouldn't you be cool?
But why was Cam flying coach?
Oh, did you? Oh, so what I heard with the story is that he missed his flight. So he was coming back from Paris, and he missed his flight, so he had to jump on the quickest flight he could, which I think had Dallas involved in there as a connecting.
Okay.
And so he ended up getting economy coach because that's all they had. And so that's why he was up asking the dudes like, "Hey, man, I'll give you money to your seat." And so everybody has the right, to say yes or no.
Yeah.
But I'm like, me, everything. I'm like, really? You're not going to accept that $1,500 from this black man? What's your problem?
I wouldn't even know what to do if Cam Newton walked up to me and asked for the exit row. Like, I wouldn't even know how to deal with that, especially dressed the way that he was. Because dressed the way that Cam was getting on that flight, he should have been on a charter. Like, who takes an international flight dressed like that?
Like, try to be low profile for a second if you can.
Dude, let me get on an hour flight to L.A. I'm going to have some sweats on. But Cam dressed like he just got off the runway with the haberdashery and the glasses, and he kept it moving.
His hat game is on point. His chapeau was nice.
Man.
Yeah, but there's all that. There's so much that's going on. Willie, you know how I feel about agents. We've talked about this.
I recall.
And I just don't like that are they really controlling anything? Because I don't think that they are. But they think that they are because the player controls everything at the end of the day.
Right. Agents work for players. Like that's.
Yeah, the agent doesn't have any power. The player has all the power.
Correct.
So I'm getting confused when people are like, well, the agent decide. I'm like, Rich Paul is not doing anything. LeBron's doing everything. Rich Paul is the ventriloquist on the end of his lap. Like, LeBron's calling all of those shots. So that's why I always used to get confused. I'm like, why am I listening to this dude?
This conversation isn't nearly as fun without you sitting 5 feet from me screaming in my face. It's just not nearly as fun. I know how you feel about Rich Paul and agents in general. The best part about that conversation that we had about agents that literally led to a fist fight in the parking lot was the fact that of the 4 people out of me, you, Jason, and Chris, you were the only one who actually had one. That's what made it so much better. Is you're screaming about agents, you're sweating and you're yelling, and you're the only one who has one.
Does that underscore my frustration with mine? No, mine's awesome. No, I gotta say, my agent is pretty awesome. She's fantastic. Only one I've had, 20 years. She's pretty great.
Man.
But the general nature of them, I'm like, what? Why are you here right now? I just don't know what they're doing half the time. But you know what? I can understand Willie wanting to leave. I can understand that.
Yeah.
But he fits that system so well.
And that's the thing.
That part is kind of weird.
Yeah, that's the thing. It'll be interesting to see how the Kings follow with this because it's not, I don't know what the market is. I don't know what the market's going to be for Willie. So they have an opportunity. Probably, they extend that qualifying offer and just see how it plays out.
I see Willie as a lower level DeAndre Jordan.
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
But but he's not going to give me that presence around the rim that DeAndre does on a consistent basis. But he'll finish those dunks like crazy and run that floor all night long.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't. Now you have to think about, okay, what we have to pay him for that.
But how crazy is
that? He's not
that?
going to bang every night.
Like, think about what you just said, though. He'll finish dunks at the rim, right? But he can't be a presence. But he can't be a presence when it comes to getting a rebound or a block shot. It's the same exact muscle group. It's the same exact muscle group to catch an alley-oop as it is to block a shot or rebound. But he excels at one more than he does the other two.
Yeah, I mean, that's all about a choice, right? I don't want to say it's about desire, but it's about a choice.
Yeah, or it could be a little bit of both, yeah.
I don't ever want to question his heart because I really like that he plays at a high energy. He's just always going. But it is that question like Dennis Rodman and Bill Russell always said, they wanted those rebounds.
Yeah.
And that word want is such a huge word. They wanted them, so they went and they got them.
Yeah.
And Willie doesn't seem to want them enough for them to have to pay what they're going to have to pay to keep him happy.
Yeah.
Nah, I don't think that's going to work out for him. I do. I think he fits there perfectly. They're making some nice moves. I mean, I'm going to give Vlade credit because he's going all in on his plan. Whatever his plan is, he's like, I'm all in.
Mm-hmm.
Like he said a couple years ago, if it doesn't work, you can fire me in 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and he made it past that. Now he's tied to his new coach. So he's tied to Luke Walton.
Isn't that interesting how that, I mean, I don't know how I feel about the way the Kings were like, yeah, we heard about the accusations.
Well,
we'll see you guys tomorrow at practice.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They're like, yeah, we'll see you tomorrow at practice.
Well, I think they handled it the right way in that, you know, there was no indication from anybody that anyone knew this was coming, whether it was the Lakers or the Kings or anybody. And I thought they did a good job of kind of keeping everything low profile. They didn't publicize his coaching staff. I thought they did a good job with that. And then like they marched him out for a public appearance the other day. And that was the first time where it was like, wait, is the investigation over? Like, what do y'all like? Don't do that because the optics of it are bad. I get the idea. You need to get Luke Walton out there in the community. You can't do it right now because you're telling us that there's an investigation going on. And if we're to believe the seriousness of this investigation, it could result in Luke Walton no longer having his job. By you marching him out there for public appearances, you're acknowledging that this investigation means nothing one way or another.
His first appearance should have been to answer those questions. His first appearance should have been to answer the questions, and a team representative next to him saying, "We did our investigation. Whatever they decided, like, hey, we are going to go ahead with him as our coach. But if the NBA comes back and says something, we will honor that, or whatever. But you got to answer that first."
Love you, brother.
Hey, much love. Always love checking in with you, man. I appreciate it, and I think I'll be up there at some point.
All right, you can come hang out. I got this beautiful studio at the house. You can just come hang out over here. Bring the dog.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, man.
Done.
All right.
Done. I'll see you, player.
Kenneth Aloysius Rudolph. That's a perfect way to wrap up the Monday edition. I have on this date in sports history, I couldn't really find anything like great, but you remember the 11 and a half hour 3-day tennis match? That happened. That's all I could really find. It's kind of getting to that slow time of year where we'll tell you it was on this day in 2000 and something that LeBron James was drafted. It was on this. There was not a lot of good, juicy stuff there on this date in sports history. I want to thank you again for tuning in. Thanks to everybody who has reached out, 916-888-5898. That, of course, is the 24/7 text line. Whenever you are listening to today's episode, you want to chime in with your thoughts on whatever we're talking about at the time, you could do that. Again, 916-888-5898. Those conversations go on all day long, as they do on Facebook. Just search Damian Barling. Hit the like button there. Head over to DamianBarling.com as well. Launched that website over the weekend. And if you want to support the show, if you want to donate, Patreon, we've started that page at the suggestion of a number of you. So you can head over and check that out. Again, completely honest with you, there's no incentives to do it right now. I know that it's supposed to be like tiers and exclusive content, and I have some ideas for that stuff, but none of it is active yet. But if you want to support the podcast, you can. Damian Barling on Patreon. Appreciate each and every single one of you. Thank you so much for listening, downloading, streaming, rate, and review, particularly over there on Apple Podcasts. But regardless of the subscription service that you listen to us on, please take a split second to rate the show and maybe a minute or two to review it as well. Again, appreciate you for being with us. We will see you again tomorrow here. Oh, and thanks to Jason Anderson and Ken Rudolph for joining us today. And thank you. We'll see you tomorrow on the podcast with Damian Barling.